Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I'm often asked about the best places internationally to invest. I think it is natural that many people around the world who are not used to exploring emerging markets, developing markets, etc., tend to have an interest in some other parts of the world, and they're not familiar with those, and so they ask, well, where should I look? So today I'm going to discuss with you the top 3 most undervalued markets or countries according to an unusual metric that you're probably not used to hearing about. And so this should be an interesting perspective, and we'll discuss whether these are potentially good places to be looking for investments and whether we should be looking at them for real estate or for stocks, etc. So we're going to do that. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, nail the notification bell, make sure you hit the all notifications. I really appreciate you subscribing. And if you'd like help with international setups for yourself or you're for business, you're relocating, you'd like help with getting a citizenship, getting a residency, you'd like to optimize your taxes, you'd like to protect your assets, form companies, open bank accounts, all that, please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send us a message through our websites, offshorecitizen.net or offshorecapitalist.com. All right, so quick little quiz for you, or just guess. If you were to pick the top 3, meaning the most undervalued markets, so in the world, to pick 3 countries, what would you guess that those 3 countries would be? Okay, so I'll give you a second so you can put them in the comments below. Would love to hear what you think. And now I'm going to give you the context of what it is that we're going to measure this by. So we are going to do a kind of unusual measure, but I think a relevant one. And this was provided to me by a close friend and client, great investor, who sent kind of some chart looking at the world. And by the way, by this metric, the US is basically the most overpriced market going. So this is comparing to the percentage of its history that these countries have been above above the current cyclically adjusted price earnings ratio. Okay, that's kind of a whole mouthful. So let's start with just a quick explanation. So CAPE, cyclically adjusted price earnings ratio, comes from Dr. Shiller. Dr. Shiller is quite famous for some of his work, and basically the idea is that price earnings ratios tend to have short-term fluctuations, and so he basically has this rolling. The cyclically adjusted means that they have a 10-year span, so it moves more slowly. It kind of provides a leveling effect on what the price earnings ratio for the markets of that country are. Okay. What we're then doing is we're recognizing that, hey, listen, Japan's are typically always high, Russia's are typically always low, the US is high but not that high compared to Japan. And so rather than trying to compare Russia to the US, which is always going to make Russia look cheap, we're comparing Russia to itself. And we're saying, hey, when has Russia, what percentage of the time has Russia been below the level that it is currently at? Okay, or above the level it is currently at. What is it? Above, below, yeah. Anyway, let me think here now. Okay, well, the chart's not going to be especially relevant, although we'll see. But basically it would be, the amount of time that it has spent below the current level. Okay, so that's what we're rating, as we're saying, hey, listen, what a percentage of the time has it been above the level that it is at today? So in other words, if the price is down, then if we track that history, is this down a lot by historic standards, or is it high compared to historic standards? So to give you some idea, the current U.S. Cyclically adjusted price earnings ratio, it is above the current level for more, meaning that the current level has been above the historic level, or like 90% of the time, more than 90% of the time, it has never been this high. Okay, so it's a very, very small percentage. Less than 10% of the time has it been this high. That's basically the idea. Okay, so using this metric, we come up with the bottom 3 countries, the ones that have almost never been this low. Okay, and these we're going to do in order from lowest. Actually, I'll go from third lowest to in reverse, like in descending order. Okay, so the first one is Poland. All right, so people might not have thought of that. Poland has rarely been this cheap. according to the cyclically adjusted price earnings ratio. These are looking at their stock markets, right? Number 2, Malaysia. Okay, again, rarely been this low. And number 3 is Turkey. Pretty much never been this low. Okay, never spent much time below the current level. So what this means is by historic standards, it is very low. Okay, now this is referring specifically to stock markets. So you're not necessarily saying that this means that real estate markets are good. It doesn't necessarily mean whatever. And it's not to say that markets can't go lower. You know, there's an expression which says, what do you call a market that's just gone down by 80%, you know, one that hasn't yet gone down by 90%, right? You can see basically another 50% decline. And so, you know, that being said, I do think that investing counter-cyclically tends to be a worthwhile way of looking at mitigating risk and helping to amplify return. This being said, let's just kind of dive in a little bit. So I think that when you're at these levels, let's say looking at Turkey, you're at the point where it's massively oversold. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to reverse, but it does mean that it's wise to look for a catalyst that might cause it to reverse, because it could very easily. Okay, that's the first thing. Second of all, and I would say something similar for Malaysia, I could say something similar for Poland. Okay, these are all places that I think you can be bullish about in a bunch of different regards. There's nothing. Like, there's a bunch of structure of Turkey, Malaysia, and Poland that all three means that, hey, listen, you should probably be positive on. If you were to compare Poland to surrounding countries, why is it underperforming so much? There's a lot to like about Poland. Yeah, there's some problems, of course. You're not going to be this far down if you don't have some problems, but there's some good things. Turkey, lots of good things to like about Turkey, right? Malaysia, tons to love about Malaysia. Now, this being said, I've mentioned in a previous video that right now I think that when it comes to real estate, the Malaysian market is getting to the point where it is pretty beaten down, where I think actually it is probably becoming a very good buy. Not just historically it's been cheap, but now it's at the point where the capital flows have been decreased so much because of the lack of people being able to access that market and the selling pressure due to people not being able to go into that market are quite high. And as a result, I think it's probably around a pretty good time to be buying, you know, whether it's now or in 6 months or, you know, whatever, depending on activity, I think it's pretty decent. Turkey, from a real estate standpoint, I think is less at that stage. I think that, you know, things are cheap, but there still is a lot of capital that is able to flow in there. We don't have that same decrease in buying pressure and increase in selling pressure. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. So we might be more interested in looking at the stock market in Turkey. And the way that I would look at that is namely through a regional ETF, right? So I'd say, okay, what is an ETF that tracks the Turkish market? And something very similar for the Polish market. So that would be my thought. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Did you think of these countries? What are some other countries that stand out to you? Do you see some opportunities? Do you see some really big threats? Would love to hear from you. Share it in the comments below. And again, if you'd like help, please reach out to me. I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.